All right, now let's take a look at the stories that have been captured here on your local dailies. And let's start with the Star newspaper. On the front page, Musalia buys poll cars. Sakaja takes lead role. Musalia buys poll cars. That is on the front page of the Star. All right. Musalia buys poll cars. Sakaja takes lead role. ANC leader in quiet display of financial muscle as he plans to launch his State House bid. That is the story on the front page of the Star. They're about Ruto will be the 5th president, says Governor Anne Waiguru. Captured there for you. I will give you more details briefly. And on the second page of the Star, according to Moses Kuria, Raila would beat Ruto in a 2-horse race. 4-horse race would lead to a runoff as there will be no clear winner. A projection by Gatundu South MP Moses Kuria shows that ODM chief Raila Odinga would beat Deputy President William Ruto hands down in a 2-horse race. Kuria, once an insider in Ruto's camp, said that without ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi and his Wiper counterpart Kalonzo Musyoka on the ballot, Raila would win the presidential race by 52.28%. This translates to about 8.12 million votes. Ruto will come second with 47.72%, translating to about 7.42 million votes. Now, according to the projections, Ruto would beat Raila in Mount Kenya, Northeastern, Turkana, and Kalenjin Rift Valley. Raila, on the other hand, would lead in Nairobi, Masailand, Kisii, Ukambani, Nyanza, and Western. That is just about it. But according to his projection, it continues therein. You can take a look at that story. That was just but a brief. Conduct of police officers during 2013-2017 polls back to haunt them. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority, that is IPOA, yesterday recommended that 4 police officers be charged with murder and manslaughter in relation to deaths that occurred during the 2013-2017 polls period. Several names have been recommended to be punished for the offenses that were conducted during the said period. Very quickly, to that story of Musalia Mudavadi, it is now said that Musalia Mudavadi will also have a call center which will be located at a secret place and will be operating 24 hours. According to a plan, Mudavadi intends to deploy up to 50,000 poll agents across the country in every polling station. Now, this was said by Sakaja, who said that according to the plan, it will be Musalia will set up campaign structures and recruit the relevant staff in the next few weeks. So that is just but a brief. And finally, on politics, Jubilee plans NDC to ratify 2022 coalition with Raila. Ruling party is set to hold a national delegates conference next month. A quick one is President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee Party will hold a national delegates convention next month to install substantive officials and ratify a proposed coalition with Raila Odinga. The Jubilee National Management Committee, the party's administration organ, convenes today for a key meeting to discuss the logistics of the NDC and craft the summit's agenda. Now, the NDCs is coming at a time when Uhuru's men are pushing for radical changes to the party's leadership. It could also seal the fate of Secretary General Raphael Tuju, as well as to how to kick out Deputy President William Ruto as the deputy party leader. Okay. Jen.
Let's now quickly go through the front page of the Daily Nation, starting with the stories here on the header. Number 1, regions where campaign costs an arm and leg. And according to a report that was done a couple of months ago, Western and Nyanza have been noted to be the most expensive regions to run campaigns in, as one senator actually admitted to having spent over 100 million Kenya shillings when it comes to campaign. But the average that has been put for these particular regions, I think in Western let me just give you the actual figures. Western, the average that candidates used during the campaign period has been put to be 45.8 million Kenya shillings. That is roughly 458,000 US dollars. And in Nyanza, they come in second with 43.3 million Kenya shillings. And this is for the senatorial position. It has been termed to be one of the most expensive positions in these particular counties. We'll be getting to the details in a bit. The other story here is in regards to Mudavadi's promises, as yesterday he, laid out his blueprint towards the recovery of the country's economic state. He did give a brief of, his track record over the years, going back to when he was the finance minister in 1992, and what he hopes to do for the country should him and his government come into power as the next president. Coming to a story here concerning the health sector, with hospitals up in arms over NHIF's new dialysis rates. And this is such, personally speaking, this is bad news, because I have a family member who is on dialysis twice a week. But the other day they did say they're going to be reviewing the number of sessions that individuals have to undergo from 2 to 3, which is a good move to be at par with the international standards. But now that actually comes at a cost of 3,000 Kenya shillings, because they are now cutting down the amounts that they have been paying through NHIF, the reimbursement, from 9,000 to 6,000. And this is going to be a huge blow to so many people who have to undergo dialysis. And looking at this particular story, let me just give you some details of it. We currently have 142 dialysis centers that are in the private sector and 54 that are in the public sector. And looking at this center, you can clearly see the public sector has more. And as a result of this decision by NHIF to reduce the reimbursements from 9,500 to 6,500, there are some private hospitals that are saying that this cut will actually will result in them closing down their dialysis services that they're offering, because you're dealing with blood. You're dealing with blood. And most of the equipment that are used, apart from the machine, looking at the filters, the medicine that are given to the patients, and also the immune boosters that are given, they can only be used once, one-time usage on these particular things. And looking at something like the filter, which VAT actually applies when it comes to its acquisition, this means that patients will have to top up 3,000 per session to be able to get dialysis, and especially looking at private hospitals, which actually have the most dialyzing machines. So this is something that is, I personally think, is unfair to the patients that are going to be dialyzing, trying to see how they're going to get this extra 3,000, because for some, NHIF was coming through mad. It was coming through because they weren't able to get this particular funds, but now they will have to get an extra 3,000 per session to be able to just get this particular services offered to them. And speaking to this was Dr. John Gige, who is a kidney specialist as well as the president of the Kenya Renal Association, saying that this move will negate all the gains in the renal sector, because reimbursement was a game changer for the patient. So, man, that touches close to home. Finally, bringing you back to the front page of the Daily Nation, the final story here, the main read: Uhuru Raila delay Nairobi campaigns. And this is in regards to campaigning in the Nairobi County, which is the bedrock of the country. Looking at the gubernatorial seats, the senatorial seats, we are yet to see MPs that are affiliated to Jubilee or ODM come out to declare the intentions, because, as they say, the working relations between Jubilee and ODM is sort of putting them in a catch-22 situation, because they don't know, if I declare I want to run for this seat, will I be told by my leader that that seat has been reserved for my colleagues, kuna mtu tunapea kwa hiyo pande ingine, or the other way around. But we'll be giving you more details as has been captured on this particular daily. Doreen.
All right, let's come to the People's Daily, and perhaps you can begin with some business matters this morning. And this is because Kenya has now been named 2021 top travel destination, whereby the players in the tourism sector now expect a strong recovery because of that. This is beginning end of this year up until 2021, which is a good move, because just looking at how COVID-19 affected that particular sector, going by that mention or that award that Kenya also got in regards to that being named top travel destination, looks like a good move and a reprieve for the tourism sector. And still on voter registration, right now leaders are going to the grassroots trying to urge Kenyans, and even most especially the young people, to come out and register as voters. And this happened yesterday as the Luo Council of Elders also weighed in on that poor voter turnout as they were speaking to youths in the Nyanza region, urging them to come out and register as voters, because if they're saying they want to vote for ODM leader Raila Odinga come 2022, then how are they going to do so if they're not coming out to register as voters? Again, given the fact that the Nyanza region is also one of those areas, just according to IEBC, that has registered few voter that has registered few people when it comes to that voter registration, and this just comes with less than a week towards that end, towards that the last day of this voter enlisting. And away from that, now there's a new study that shows a decline in malaria deaths and infections across the country, and in most areas whereby there were numerous death cases as a result of malaria, most especially areas around the Lake region. With this new studies, now it shows that this has reduced, and they're now attributing this to interventions to eliminate this disease, including diagnosis and management cases, which are some of the reasons as to why it has led to at least a decline and which has at least led to a decline in the number of death cases as a result of malaria for both the children as well as adults. We also have that issue concerning the CBC, or better still, coming to matters education, where the Education Cabinet Secretary, that is George Magoha, says that now they'll build over 11,000 classes by April, and this is to accommodate this new form system of education, the CBC, as grade 5 would be transitioning to the next level. And they're now calling out to locals to ensure that they get contractors who will at least ensure that this over 11,000 classes that they want to build can actually come to fruition by the time it gets to April, May therein. To some bit of politics now. The ODM is now in talks with other parties to form coalition. This is what the Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya is saying. Of course, we saw as of yesterday, much of what we are saying in the papers is that the DP is now choosing to go at it by himself in what is now informing that bottom-up economic approach. And the former premier choosing to go at it through regional kingpins, and now looks like they are in talks with parties like Jubilee, PNU, trying to also target some Oka leaders to try and see how best they can battle it out with the UDA come 2022. That is what came out yesterday from Kakamega Governor. That is Wycliffe Oparanya. And also right now, Waiguru faces arrest as Graph probe concluded just as he defected to UDA in Tuesday. Looks like now the cases that what she was being charged are coming back to haunt, and this is according to the EACC, where Guru received 10 million as travel imprest for non-existent trips. This is part of what she's being charged with, and she is reported to have traveled to US, UK, France, Morocco, India, Germany, as well as Abu Dhabi, just facing some of those corruption charges there. That is what is facing currently the Kirinyaga governor and Waiguru. That is how the PD looks like. Ray.
So the front page of the Standard talks about, succession politics, and we already established that we are already on this journey. So apparently, the main header here is Ruto allies go for top Uhuru men. My guess is as good as mine. Your guess is as good as mine. We're talking about none other than Joe Musheru as well as Fred Matiang'i, who've already been hearing, conversation about why they would be the best fit to have on each side. So DP supporters say Fred Matiang'i and Joe Musheru are openly supporting ODM leader Raila Odinga, yet they hold sensitive dockets that might influence the general election. Right? One is interior and the other is ICT, information, communication and technology. That's the front page of the Standard. That's a big read on the Standard this morning. We also have a story here that governors are now suing senators amid extortion claims. We'll be giving you details. And just talking about details, after the burial of Agnes Tirop, during that particular ceremony, athletes came out guns blazing and saying that something needs to change, especially when it comes to gender-based violence that is meted out on young budding female athletes. And one who took to the stage, this is none other than Viola Chepto, who is an athlete who is pushing for better treatment of and care of women in sports. And this is what she has to say. Well, I'm here for one issue, gender-based violence, and I'm standing here because something has to be done. It has to be done now and not tomorrow. Now and not tomorrow. According to Chepto, it is unsettling that for many years, budding athletes as young as 15 have been taken advantage of by men who are pretending to be their coaches but end up being sex predators. She claimed that some coaches had been taking advantage of junior athletes by taking so much from their earnings. They even pretend to be their coaches and lovers, but in the real sense, they are predators and parasites who are only there for financial gain. She went further to appeal to the Athletics Kenya to investigate the issue and act. Taking you back to last week and the week before, when the country woke up to the news that Agnes Tirop was no longer in the land of the living, and that she was stabbed, and the main suspect is none other than her estranged, or rather her husband, so to speak, 41-year-old at that. She was just 25 years old. So whenever I hear about Agnes Tirop, as well as now hearing from Viola Chepto, who took to the podium to address mourners during the burial, it just begs the question: do we have laws that govern? Are there policies? What goes around when it comes to the sporting arena? Young athletes. Because when we were having the Tokyo Olympics 2020, young athletes, female, actually made international headlines, by some even coming out and saying that they were not in the right mental space to participate in the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. Why? Because they had suffered abuse over the years at the hands of their coaches. If you watch gymnastics, you might know who I'm talking about, and it has been the talk of town, so to speak, in the sporting arena. But now, because this issue is home with us, I don't know, I want to pick your brains, Jane, Doreen, as well as Victor, in regard to this issue of young athletes, young promising athletes who end up receiving the short end of the stick because their coaches are there to fleece them. They pose as lovers, coaches, but they're becoming sex predators. Because with that story about Agnes Tirop, we understand that some of her property had already been sold off by the main suspect. Who starts? Jane, what's your take?
Personally, I think this is a really sad situation because I have always been sporty throughout my education, from primary, secondary, up through campus, and I was lucky to have genuine coaches who were really interested in the potential that I had in the sporting areas that I was in, basketball and volleyball, through to campus. And one of my coaches back in campus, she was called Will Kester. She was extremely protective of us, and right now it makes sense, it makes more sense. But looking back at that time, we were like, hey, coach, tulie kidogo, let us have fun with the other coaches, the other guys. We were just, naive and blissfully enjoying the time that we were there when we go for games. And I remember there's a time we used to be very competitive between the campus that I was in and two others, not going to be mentioning names. And she was extremely protective of us, and we never truly understood why she was like that. But right now, it makes a lot of sense. And it's really sad that we are seeing coaches or people purporting to be coaches taking advantage of such young talent, abusing them, misusing them, and in sad situations like what we saw with Agnes, resulting in death, and also involving some of the people that are closest to them. And I think this is where even the ministry we need like rigid guidelines that even determine who is a coach, what credentials should you have, what training should you have, what licenses should you hold before you get to call yourself a coach or a manager of a professional athlete. That's what I think.
Doreen?
For me, I think it's just having those right policies, because, I mean, for it to just get to that point, I mean, when you look at Agnes Tirop's story, even before the lady was buried, the spouse had already sold one of the properties, and he was planning to sell 3 others. And I just wondered, with all these properties that were under Agnes Tirop's name, to what extent did this man even have access to all of them? Because going by the reports that we're reading even on Monday, it actually looks like he had access to all of them. For him to sell one and planning to sell 3 others and still knows where the remaining was. So for me, I think it's just a question and a matter of policies being put into structure and being put into place. Because I mean, when you look at it, we can't have this, perhaps if you talk about ladies in sports, we can't have them having female coaches, all of them. So clearly, just because someone will kill you and then take your property, or someone will have some ulterior motive, then when you refuse, they go ahead and do whatever it is that they want to do. Obviously, we'll have the male coaches. So why can't we work on these policies and the correct structures that can protect the athletes, and maybe not just females, but even the males? Because also we've had cases of male who have lost their lives, and sometimes it's just in the same breath and in the same vein.
Victor, what do you think? What's your take?
I will approach it in 2 ways. One, athletics is a professional field that actually many athletes are earning from it pretty well. We cannot name names because wako wengi tu sana. That is one. Each and every athlete, be it in football, basketball, athletics that we have in Kenya, and the latest being the late Tirop. As an athlete, you must make sure that you do due diligence. If you're having a coach, if you're hiring a coach, do a background check. Let's take a look at some of the international fields. For example, in England or FIFA, whichever way. Each and every player in England or in English Premier League, so to speak, just an example, has an agent, and those agents are professionals, and each and every move they make is always under scrutiny. Do due diligence. Some of these people, some of the athletes' agents are actually their own fathers, uncles.
Mothers.
Some of them are even their brothers who are professionals, have somebody who is close to you. On the second note, as professional agents or coaches or trainers, let me just ask you a question. What are you there for? Because let me give you as an example as a teacher. No, not me. A teacher, your work is to teach students and make sure that they get the right materials and they pass examination. Pump a lot of knowledge in their heads. So as a trainer, are you doing your bit? Ama jamaa kishinda unasikia amekimbia mazee 42 kilometers and then you're waiting at the end of the journey. Say, that money is going to be channeled in my account. That person has worked. So if there's an agreement between you and your athlete, make sure that you just honor that one. I think Tirop is just an eye-opener to what happened. May she continue resting in peace, but to all the athletes, do due diligence.
And just to add on to that, a good example would be Elliot Kipchoge.
Exactly.
And I know he's had many years behind him to get to where he is today. But from what I know, Elliot Kipchoge has he's like an organization. There is someone who's in charge of his diet, in charge of his exercise, in charge of his health, in charge of his marketing, in charge of everything, and no one thing overlaps the other. Even if he comes here for an interview at 1 p.m. and at 2 p.m. is when he's supposed to have his meal, we will cut short that interview because as per what his management deems right and according to what he deserves in order to perform better, he needs to have his meal by this particular time. And you see, that way he has a team that is out for his own good, and consequently we can see the results. So I think other athletes and other professionals in these in the sporting arena need to take it more seriously and stop looking at it as a, shortcut to getting quick money. It's really sad that the talent is actually who gets to suffer the most.
I second. Yes, I second that.
On that note, IEBC will not extend registration exercise. No extension. No extension.
Actually, it's next week.
But they said there was no enough cash for that
November.
extension, so clearly people were supposed to come
What
out.
Kenyans need to understand is that the IEBC does not generate its own money. It is taxpayers' money.
So if you want them extended,
Actually, they are spending my money, your money, our money. IEBC has no money of its own, So if we continue acting as if we exist in a vacuum, and as far as our budgetary allocations and what we do with the money, or what the government and the entities that have been, allocated this money, we need to remember, government does not generate its money. It is you and I as a taxpayer that fund the government.
And as of yesterday on the papers, they did say they've only registered about 800,000
They've not even hit that
against
million mark.
the targeted 6+ million.
Yes.
But I think that's why Chebukati did say that they're going to now move the BVR kids to universities and colleges.
to the youths.
Yeah.
But I think that would have been one of the
Initial
plans.
moves.
Go to churches each and every Saturday, Sunday, or even Fridays. Go to mosques, church. I mean,
But trust and
think they
believe
did
the
not
last
read-
minute rush will be real.
I
Yeah.
think they did not carry out a survey before they engaged, or rather they embarked on this particular registration. They just thought that things are kawaida.
People
But
will
looking
come
even
to
at
us.
the political
Yeah.
scene, as well as, what are your priorities right now? Let's be very honest. What are your priorities as a Kenyan right now? First of all, you need to put food on the table. The COVID disruption has hit hard and has hit all sectors. The high cost of living, that notwithstanding, we have the education calendar that is taking parents and guardians on a spin on a daily.
Where?
So elections, registering for elections is way at the back of our minds, and that's just being honest. I wish the IEBC, the electoral body, had conducted a survey and now looked at those areas that they're now coming back in hindsight to, like, oh, you know what, now we can take these kids to where people gather, churches, as you said, Victor, there, and learning institutions. That is where you'd have started first, because Kenyans are dealing with so much at this point.
Well, Ray, I appreciate what you're saying, that we have a lot to deal with. I mean, clearly, we really have a lot to deal with. But also, I think, to some extent, why there's this
Voter apathy.
exactly, and people are really not coming out, is also because of that notion. I mean, I think it was on Monday or perhaps last week on Tuesday, if my memory serves me correct, whereby there was an article that was saying that especially youths, Kenyan youths, are just tired of having to go registered as voters and perhaps vote, because there's have that mindset and notion that we already have those leaders elected by the system. So why am I going to get registered and vote at the end of the day? Why should I waste my time? And then tying it to what you're saying, I have other things to do. I have to go look for a job. If I don't have one, I have to go look for money if I need to. Instead of getting to queue at that line, getting registered, then having to vote in August, and I know perhaps my vote won't count. So I think some of these things in terms of mindset and how they've been shaped, what has been fed into us, what we know, is some of those reasons as to why people are just feeling like, of what importance is it?
But I don't think that is reason enough to each their own. But still, we are at a time where we cannot be feigning ignorance anymore. You can't be saying that hata nikipiga kura itasaidia aje. Si upige kura alafu jua itasaidia aje.
And that's where civic education comes in, Jane, because
Yeah.
We're talking about voter apathy, and numbers don't lie. Right now, we're talking about a target of 6 million new voters. They have not even gotten
To a mill as of yesterday.
yesterday. And I don't know what magic is going to happen in between now and the next 5 days
There's clearly no magic.
when this actually terminates. Yeah. So civic education, Kenyans, what Wanjiko needs to understand is, your vote is your voice. So if you do not cast that ballot, it basically means that you allow Regina, Doreen, Victor, and Jain to make the decision for you. And what this really means is that if things go south, you do not have, you will be saying, mimi hata sikupiga kura, mimi sikuchagua hata yule, alichaguliwa lakini si mimi. But at the end of the day, the leaders we elect end up governing us. So unless we change the narrative and let our votes speak, you say, by the way, this person did not deliver in their last term. As far as I'm concerned, I expected health, roads, water, and sanitation, security, blah, blah, blah. They did not deliver. So if they did not deliver, then I pick someone else and hope that they are going to deliver because they have said, this is my manifesto. This is what I will be bringing at the table. So that card affords you, that voter's card affords you a voice to make a decision. So if you just chill and relax and you let other people make the decision for you, then you do not have that voice to come back and start criticizing when things go south or when things don't work for you. Kenyans need to understand, voters need to understand that this is the time. We are the most important people, or rather commodity of trade at this point as a voter.
Regina, you are very right. But I think, let's just face it. IEBC wanted 49.5 billion shillings to conduct an election. But out of that amount, they've been given almost half. But then look at it. We've had this discussion here. And most of the analysts say that, and actually it's in the law, that voter registration should be an ongoing exercise. It should be continuous. But one thing is that IEBC did not do proper civic education. That is one. Two, the amount that they have been given, perhaps if you ask me, maybe the chairman is trying to squeeze it. That can fit the voter registration exercise as well as next year's polls.
Actually, that's one of the reasons that Chebukati said that looking at this mass voter registration, they'd asked for about 4 billion, but they got 1.2 billion, and about 538 million was just salaries for the temporary staff that they were going to be using. So you can see less than a billion was going towards the entire process. The kits, the BVR, transportation, again, the materials.
It won't be enough. And then talk of the pandemic. We've been there for the last 19 or so months. And then that scare that was already out in the atmosphere. Ukienda hapo, corona is unseen guest. It will attack you, it will come, and it will not go. So I think guys are just scared. Generally, unaambia ukienda hapo utashikwa, social distance, and then all of a sudden you're telling people, go and register and vote and register as voters. You get what I'm trying to say? People are not given that slow, and we are not conditioned slowly to accept the situation that this is what's going to happen next. BBI took center stage for a very long time, from this to that to court case and back, and then all of a sudden, voter registration, you people go and vote. It's like unaambia mtoto usiende huko nje kwa giza.
Lakini enda sahi.
Sasa fanya hivi, enda. Well, mtoto will not go.
Ukikosa kuenda, kwa nini ukuji?
Kwa nini ukuje? Anafika kwa mlango anasema mama si ukuje.
But this all goes back to that sensitization and awareness and just going out and telling them, okay, we understand this is what is happening. And we understand that we also have this amount of time before we go to the elections. And in order to make sure that your vote counts, this is what needs to happen. And for it to happen, we will make sure that this and this is in place to prevent this and this from happening. And I think that is a huge part of the process that wasn't done as effectively as it should have been.
Well, regardless of the challenges presenting themselves, whether civic education, whether as a Kenyan youth you feel like maybe your vote won't count or will count, nonetheless, COVID, wanasema kura yako ni sauti yako. So if you really feel like you want to make a difference nonetheless, go get registered, go vote. Regardless of the challenges, because there will always be challenges. You'll always feel some type of way. You'll always think some type of way. So nonetheless, go get registered. Come August, go out there and vote.
Doreen, umeongea vizuri. Nonetheless, go and register. But then there is that joy that comes with voting. When you have that ink, social media is always a buzz.
Trending. Kila mtu
nakapicha. What have you done to your country? Apart from paying taxes, and have you voted?
Tutaweka marka hapa kwa kidole.
Kwa hivyo Regina ni wale wa.
This is that joy.
Don't tell us we will be missing out on the photo op online. Please. Oh, that's on a lighter note.
Usiweke wako,
guys.
enda upige kura.
On a lighter note, tukikaribia kufunga.
Yes.
There's a piece here concerning our healthcare workers. So we do know that Kenya and the UK paired an agreement on the 29th of July this year to send 20,000 nurses to the UK to just, and this is the first batch. This was a process that will be happening over a number of years to bridge the shortage of 2,000 nurses in the UK, okay? So the first batch is supposed to be traveling out end of this month, early next month, but they had to undergo an English language proficiency test. And out of 300 nurses that undertook this test, only 10 passed the English language proficiency test.
Wait a minute. Out of?
300
So 290.
failed the English proficiency test.
Okay, it's just about the Queen's language. What?
Which English are we talking about? Queen's
The Queen's language.
Queen's language.
I mean, a majority
But
of
yo.
Kenyans cannot speak the Queen's English. Let's
Yeah.
be very honest.
You got to fake it till you make it, eh?
No, you cannot go to the UK and say, I wanna.
I am gonna give you your medicine
Me, I
here
think-
now.
me, I think I need to get that drug. Imagine me, I think.
Me, I know what you...
But you guys, do you see, okay, this may be on a lighter note, but it comes with such weight. Because
Yeah.
even the CS went back to like, yo manze, hata kama tunafundishana madawa, hata kizungu ni muhimu in all university and medical training colleges.
And you realize actually English language I think in all universities, if I'm not wrong, it's actually a
A
mandatory
university common
course for
course.
first years. It
Yes.
is a must.
Si kwanza tulikuwa na English 1, English 2, English 3.
101, 201,
Yes,
301.
UCC 101, UCC 201.
I have a disclaimer. I have a disclaimer.
Eh,
My
it is
current
not your
governor,
mother tongue.
Kiraito Murunge, went to Harvard.
Alienda Harvard, lakini kisungu haikumbadilika.
Na ako penye yako saizi. Mutamwambia nini?
Lakini our nurses si
But
your kinsmen.
they can type in the meds.
But you can see the consequences, because I mean, this is one of the requirements in order to go there. Can you communicate effectively? But let me tell you guys, I think looking at us here, we've all been through journalism school.
Yeah.
And speaking English is one of our requirements. You know,
Yes.
it's part of the actual job that you do. And other fields, it might not be one of the basic requirements, but looking at this particular situation with the nurses, they are going to an English-speaking space. Hakuna kuswitch to Kiswahili ama Kikuyu ama Kijaluo
It's
ama
Queen's
Kiluya ama Kimeru
language.
ikigonga ukuta.
24 hours.
Let's all be honest about it.
There's no two way to it, Ray.
Unless the government now undertakes a training of speaking English.
Crash
We
course.
have interacted with our doctors and our nurses in our various hospitals at one point or another.
Yes.
This is Kenya. Our native language, our country's language is Swahili, right? So unless government is actually now, after this, conducting this survey and this report, they now undertake a series of, training to speak English
As the primary
eloquently,
language.
Yeah.
Yes.
so that we can get our human resource placed overseas. But it would be somewhat, it is actually, what can I say? I'm trying to use a very palatable language on
Ongea
national
Kimeru
television.
tutaelewa. Tuko
You
Kenya.
Sisi ni wa Kenya. Sisi ni wa Kenya. We communicate as we do.
Yes.
And I understand. So for me, the government should now take it upon themselves to carry out a training exercise for these nurses. Because some are brilliant.
Yes.
And we're talking about, what value at the end of the day, in the course of this, placement overseas, what value will it have on us, on our medical? They'll come back, set up maybe their own hospital, nursing homes and such, and we will have continuity and also increase capacity among our nursing fraternity. So the government, with this particular report now indicates,
to step
because the
up.
last time I checked, as you've said it, Jain, when you take a nursing course, language is not a prerequisite. Unlike if you're taking law or even journalism. Are you
Yeah.
get it? So the sciences actually carry a lot of weight for nursing,
It's more practical.
Yeah.
It's more
Actually, it goes
practical.
back to career choice. You know, in journalism, you have to choose your subjects pretty well. You know, humanities, languages, and what have you. When you want to go to for medicine, sciences, and etc., etc. But then let me ask you a question. Have you ever, okay, all of us have gone to a hospital. What is the primary language there? Where songeni huko? Nani anakaa? Where songa huko?
Sisi ni wa Kenya.
Where songa? Where mama kendo lale huko?
And like when you walk to a media house.
Next week kuna interview kwenda UK.
Umepita kila kitu by there, you qualify, but one thing, effective communication.
And someone has been working there for the last 21 years.
And I think
primary language, yes.
And I think that's where the difference lies, because of the different courses that people choose. Because the way you're saying, Vic, when you walk to a hospital, which language is mostly used? Where toka hapa, enda hapa, mama ka hapa, baba, you know. But when you walk to a media house, which language is mostly used?
But hold up,
you see,
people.
As in, all you're trying to say is because of the different things that people tend to do, or the different courses they get to choose.
I agree with that. But Swahili is our national language.
No one is disagreeing with you, Ray.
No one is disagreeing. Let me finish, Lady Jane.
Okay.
Swahili is our national language.
Yes.
Right? So government wants to have a training course for our nurses to help them, you know, secure places overseas. They would have done a training because, let's be very, very honest, very few people, professionals as me, can speak eloquently. So you do not expect you do not expect a majority of us to have actually passed that particular exam, so to speak.
Let me just speak from what you're saying, Regina. You do not expect.
Yes, so government should have conducted a training first.
No, I think that is now becoming apparent that they will need to do that because they were told, okay, you've qualified to go for this, you have these papers, you're good. So also you need to pass this English test. And this is something that even when you go to the embassy before you travel, there's some tests you have to do.
Yes.
So they expected, given the quality of education that is offered, what you've been trained to do, to be able to pass this test. It was expected of you to be able to pass this test. But looking at also what Victor is saying, primarily in your area of operation, ushindangi umeongea Kisungu, especially the language that most people understand. As Regina, you say,
Masai,
it's the national language.
Everybody.
Yeah.
You know, you meet that Kashosho, 8 years,
utamongelesha Kizungu.
Eloquently.
But this situation is now unique because they are being removed from their motherland and taken to a different space, but were expected to be able to adjust to that one requirement.
And I think competency in terms of their profession would have been the first point of concern. I mean, you've been working for the last 15 years. What's your track record? I mean, you've been recommended by your bosses. Discipline? Are you playing trancy at work? You know, complaints, what have you? Competency. But when you talk of, because in the UK has a lot, many tribes. We have the Nigerians working there. We have got the
Kwanza Nigerians in the UK.
And they're working probably in such field. And you know, in Nigeria, Pidgin is their first language. We know Pidgin is their first language, and go there and you'll find them working in medical field. So are you able to communicate? But when you talk of proficiency in English, man, even Europeans.
Lakini hata tunapata zile maswali pengine walikuwa naulizwa uko like hata wewe ukiuliza like okay, hii nitaenda kuuliza mtu.
But maybe because of what happened, I mean, only 10 getting to pass, that maybe now the government or the state has now seen there's a gap. You could have been in that field for 15 years, you know, as a medic, but now there's a gap in that English language, and now it just looks like it's as important as the sciences that you took or you focused on.
Government to conduct a training of these particular nurses, then they proceed. It's about proficiency. You will learn on the go. Get the basics and learn on the go.
Effective communication.
Effective communication. Just learn the basics, then let's go.
Hey, but wait, communication ni muhimu.
Yes. What is said may not be what is heard.
Lakini wamelewa hii na wakafanya.
What is said is not what is heard.
Like, what did you say? Wataka pirita. What is that?
Excuse me? Baka mgonjwa anapona tu na language.
Pirita.
Unaenda kuidisha fries, wanasema chips.
What do you mean?
Alikula kubai fries hapo hivyo. Oh,
we will carry the diagrams
You see,
with us.
yet you're communicating the same thing. But anyway, that is that.
It's like the Tower of Babel. Well, let us spade, jamana, later wheelbarrow. Well, later, let us cement. Tower of Babel, the beauty of Ireland. All right, Jen.
That is that in regards to in the headlines. But before we get to call it a segment, we always want to just check in tuone kama barabara mambo yamebadilika or it's still the same.